All right, I want to welcome everybody to another episode of The Shadows Podcast. I'm your host, Trip Bodenheimer, and I am happy to be joined today by Daniel Harris. He's an armed services veteran with 30 plus years of service, 10 years in reserve, 20 years active duty, CEO of Muddy Boots Leadership, author of On Guard, The Four Pillars of Leadership. Sir, welcome to The Shadows Podcast.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Bodie.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you here. Definitely opened up the book. Great read. Definitely recommend to everybody. We're going to talk a little bit about that as we go throughout this episode. However, we're going to talk about the person, Daniel Harris. We're going to find out a little bit about him, and we're going to get started with some rapid fire questions. So first one for you. You ready, sir?
Yes, I am.
What is one thing you want to do or see before you die?
Actually, there are two things. I would like to meet everyone in the world, and I would like to read every book that's been published. It's not possible, and I know that, but that's my aim. I'm working on it.
Okay. Yeah. I was talking to someone today. We were talking about all the books we've got to read that we haven't even been able to crack open yet. And it's like, I just need a week on a beach just to sit back and get caught up. All right. So what is something on your to-do list that never seems to get done?
Oh my, it's, there are only 24 hours in the day, and I've been praying and asking for more hours. And I keep getting the answer that says, nope, you're not getting any more. This is it. It's 24.
Yep.
You get 24, just like and I keep arguing and bargaining, trying to get more. I did get a solution of how to get more hours, which is to find others who are not using theirs and, have them use theirs on you. So I couldn't get more hours, but I figured out how to still accomplish what I needed to do. But in terms of something that I never seem to get done within a day, it's really my writing and reading. It always flows into the next day, and I guess that's kind of a good thing. But that's an ongoing, never-ending process. And of course, it's the learning that's involved that keeps me enchanted.
Yeah, I'd say mine's probably finishing a book. I always seem to get all the way through one, and then another one seems to be calling for me. So if you could try out for a job for a day just to see what it's like, what job would you choose?
That's an interesting one. Perhaps being president of the United States.
Really? Okay.
I'd be interested in a number of things. Any man can withstand adversity, can get through that. Okay, but if you want to test a man's character, give him power. And instead of pointing fingers and always finding fault and blame at who's at the top, I'd like to see if the saying, I'm sure you've seen the quote that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. I want to test my character.
It's interesting. It's something I hadn't really thought about, but yeah, that's a good point. Okay. So you survived the rapid fire questions. Now we're going to start diving into you as the person. So, sir, if you don't mind, for someone who's not familiar with you, tell us a little bit about your upbringing.
Okay. As you know, last October, I published the book On Guard, The Four Pillars of Leadership. And I've always wanted to write a book about leadership because it's one of the things, and I think it's the last frontier that's going to help unlock and allow people or a team to bring their best self to whatever it is they're doing. So that it was published last October. And just towards the beginning of the publication process, going back, as you mentioned, 30 years I had served in the U.S. military, in the National Guard, both on the reserve side and active. Enjoyed that tremendously. Great experience, great ride. Would do it again anytime if asked. No doubt about it at all. It's unquestionable. So enjoy that tremendously. Just going back to that, my family immigrated to the U.S. from the Republic of Liberia in 1977, February. We landed at JFK Airport at 5 p.m. and it was snowing. I was about 15 years old, never encountered snow in my life. And of course, had never been to the United States with my brother, sister, and mom. My father was already here since 1970, going to school, studying at Union Theological Seminary and also at Fordham.
Yeah.
He was a Coptic Orthodox priest. And so the family arrived in New York City in February of 1977, lived in Manhattan, in Harlem, Dad's one-bedroom apartment for a couple of months. And then in April, we moved to Staten Island and kind of settled down, which a space that was much more residential versus New York City, and started life there, and my American journey began. And it's been an exciting one.
What was the toughest part of that transition for you?
I tell you, it was a number of things. First of all, it was not like anything we had seen on television or seen in books or movies.
Okay.
Complete opposite. The people, we seem to encounter a different set of Americans here in America than the Americans we encountered at home, who were members either the embassy staff who worked there, or we encountered through friends and colleagues of my parents, because we were children, younger at the time. And these people, very open, very friendly, very outgoing. They'd join us in a game of soccer in a heartbeat. They'd roll up with their cars, and if we were playing, they'd be out their cars and playing with us, and would tell us stories. And even when they came back to the U.S. for vacation, they'd bring us gifts when they returned. I remember getting this carpenter's set. My brother got a doctor's set with a stethoscope and different things. They'd bring us candies. Very, very friendly. But then arriving to America and living in Harlem, and started our journey, and my brother and I did a total immersion. We wanted to be Americans. And every television, radio, magazine, everything we could get our hands on, we couldn't get enough of this. And if you recall, I don't know if you've ever been in New York City, that time the subways were lots of graffiti, dirty. The city was undergoing a change at that time in the late 70s. It's kind of a scary and exciting place all at the same time. Then encountered, of course, racism and the comments and the views, the perspectives, and so on and so forth. So that was very, very new. Had no experience about that. Had never even came up as a conversation before arriving in America. So that was interesting.
Yeah, you told a story in your book about an incident that had happened on the subway, and because you were riding the subway back and forth, correct? And then an incident happened with a subway vigilante.
Yes, and in fact, that was a scary moment, but at the same time, I think it brought out something that many New Yorkers were feeling at the time. There was a combination of fear and I have to fend for myself, not having a trust that the police would be able to take care of you. There was this us and them. So lots of things happening all about at the same time. And this was daily as people rode the subway. The subways, like I said, used to be, now it's 180 degrees, complete opposite. We're dirty. You would oftentimes be sitting in a subway car where, as it's running through the tunnels, the lights would go out, and you would sit in that car, in a dark subway car, for a considerable period of time until the lights would come back on. The cars were not well maintained. The tracks, there were quite a few stories of news stories of trains jumping the tracks due to lack of maintenance and so on and so forth. Yeah, so it was an interesting time to say the least.
And when you're young, like 15 years old, as you were, whenever you came over to the States, it's kind of a vulnerable age for an individual because brain's still developing, your body's still growing, and a lot of times in situations like that, we tend to go down a different path than we typically would. What do you think it was that kept you going on that right path?
Oh, a number of things. Family, first of all. Our family was very close-knit with dad, mom, my brother, sister. Number of, the fact that we had just arrived here, so we didn't know anyone else, right? Yeah. So we had to hold on to each other. And additionally, mom and dad really kept a close eye on us and a watchful eye. In Liberia, our lives were structured pretty well. It was, you wake up, go to school, return, homework, tutors, dinner, play for a little bit of time, come back in. Dad was home, we watched television, and even that was structured with the news. The television station was open at 6 p.m. and it shut down at 11. So in that time was 2 hours of news. So imagine what else you got. So when we came over here, that structure pretty much continued. And it was not questioned. It was not a thing of question of rebelling. In addition to that, when we went to school, we met people who pretty much took us under their wings. I can say for myself, and that was tremendously helpful. Kind of kept a watchful eye. Mm-hmm. Would show us what right looks like. Don't do that. Stay away from that person, and so on and so forth. So between my family and the teachers, counselors, and others I met at school, and members at church, that community kept us pretty much shielded, even as we continued our growth and development, and then started to branch out and go into out into the country and meet more people.
Speaking of those influential people, you claim in your book that, everybody started calling you the science guy with the science fairs and everything going on with that at your school. And one person that you mentioned in there who was very influential in your development was Curtis High School biology teacher, Mr. Ryan. Let our audience know what Mr. Ryan meant to the development of Daniel Harris.
I tell you, and just now when you mentioned his name, Bodie, I got chills in my veins about the man. Tremendous respect and admiration for him. He was a Vietnam vet and had a war prosthetic in one leg, and he took me at face value, I felt, and got me exposed to this world of science, which I liked reading, but growing up at home and did not have the exposure of actually sitting in a lab to do anything versus sitting in a classroom with a book and picturing what reactions would look like. For example, you mix potassium and water, you get this, orangey dark color. Well, you have to imagine that when you're not in the lab, right? But here you are in the lab, you can actually mix it and see it. But Mr. Ryan really became my anchor and someone that I kind of looked up to, almost like another father figure. He would actually call me at home in the morning. Danny, you up? And 6:30, 6 o'clock, and I'll go, yes, Mr. Ryan, I'm up now. And he says, okay, good. See you in school in 45 minutes. And the covers would come flying off, and there was just this desire to meet this man and do the things that he told me to do. There was an anxiety there about it. And I would rush up to the school and he'd be pulling up, and we'd get up to the lab and we'd start to, do the experiments, and he would raise questions and he would look at things, so on and so forth. Anything I needed somehow the department miraculously made it happen. One day, because I hung around the department so much, I just became like a, like an icon there. Um, I wasn't allowed in the teacher's lounge, but the door was open this one day and I was doing something and I heard them talking, and the chairman, Mr. Baki, and his brother, both of them were in the science department. And I overheard him saying, he goes, gosh, man, this kid, one of these days, I'm going to get hauled off to jail. He demands, he's requesting this stuff. I don't know where he gets these ideas from, but he would figure out in the budget and get me these things, whatever it was. And I'm talking some pretty expensive things, which again, I had no idea about. I just knew I needed these things and they showed up. I needed microtomes, I needed termites, I needed some molecules, because we didn't have automation back then as we do today, where I can pull up a molecule on a monitor and manipulate it and move things around. So I needed all of this stuff. And I requested it and showed up. So that was an eye opener. Never paid much attention to it, the whole idea of budgets and so on, because as a science department chairman,
you're young, you didn't care.
Yeah, I didn't care. All I knew is I needed I needed some frozen termites, and I needed some microtomes, and I needed this tool on how to manipulate and special sets of microscopes, and it just showed up. So between my house, the third floor of my parents' house, and the school lab is where I did a lot of my work. And I remember Mr. Ryan in one of the lectures one day was saying that he defined something of what an American is. And I don't, he would often go off into away from biology, just talking about philosophy and a number of things. He got me to read, or got the class to read Think and Grow Rich. I remember we read it at that time. He even, we read a number of other books which were not biology related. But this one afternoon, he said, and I'll never forget this, he said, an American is not a person. He says, no, an American is a way of being, is a way of life. And he talked about freedoms, and he talked about being helpful. He talked about hardworking. He talked about, all of these attributes that, and I sat there and I said, geez, I guess must have always been an American, but this was, to the class. Yeah. Through his efforts, we were successful by my junior year. We won quite a bit of science fair and quite a bit of money added at the same time, with the news paper guys coming and interviewing both at school and at home. Television interviews were on CBS. I know we're on Channel 13 a couple of times, daily news, newspapers, through his efforts. And so at graduation, there was all this accolades. And something interesting that Mr. Baki, the chairman, got up and said were, 400 class of 400 plus graduates. I wasn't the valedictorian, but I kept going up to the stage for all of these awards because I also ran track. I love running. And Mr. Baki got up and he said, I want to share this with the parents. He said, I know some of you probably just got sick and tired of hearing Danny Harris's name called time and time again for all these awards. He says, I just want to share with you all that we didn't do anything special for him that we didn't do for all the children. He says, everything that we did for him, we did for all of the other sons and daughters sitting here. The only difference is this young man listens. And I thought that was interesting because I never thought about it before. He said he listened. He did everything we told him to do. And the result is here we are. So thanks.
Listening is such an underrated thing. And we all do it every day, but very few people truly listen to others. Yeah, Mr. Ryan, what you said about him was remarkable. I actually have a teacher, Mr. Burton, who was my fifth grade history teacher. And I always tell the students that come through, I remember him, but I don't remember 90% of the other teachers I had. So be that person. And leadership's the same way. We all have leaders, but who's that Mr. Ryan in your life? And
Yeah.
You didn't stop there doing remarkable stuff. You're like, you know what? Let's pick up German as well. How did that go?
Well, so it wasn't really only Mr. Ryan. I had the Backey brothers, the German, and then I had Mr. Scheiper for German. And again, through science, I ended up getting to meet him, and he said, there are lots of interesting. Of course, I knew lots of the history of science and German. And he says, I have lots of experiments that you would probably be interested in, but they're in German. And if you want, and I'll give them to you, but you have to learn German. So I started learning German. I ended up taking several years of it, and I even continued with it through college.
Not an easy language.
No, it's not. No, it's not. But once you learn the fundamentals, just like anything, there's the foundation, and you spend time mastering the fundamentals and the foundation, getting a strong sense of the foundation, and then you can build up from there. So that was exciting, and again, continue to expand my periphery on just life in America. So those Mr. Scheiper, most of my time was there in the science lab. On the track field, there was Mr. Shane. We used to call him Dick Tracy. He stood on the track. He had on. It didn't matter what the temperature was. He had that hat that he had on his coat.
Was it yellow?
It's the same khaki style coat. So we used to call him Dick Tracy. And he'd be on there with his clock, and his stopwatch, run it again and run it again, and so a typical workout, just to give you an idea, was we do our mile warm up, and then we'd start to do the fartleks, the speed work, 400s, we do about 6 of those, and then the 800s, we do 3 of those, and then the miles, we do 4 of those. And then we'd go out for a long distance slow run. And I remember once the principal telling him, these kids, we were covering about 130 miles per week. And the principal was telling him, I don't drive my car 130 miles a week. You can't have these kids run 130 miles a week. But we never thought about it. We just did it because that was the work routine, to include Saturdays. And the result was, we made the Penn relays. We qualified and entered Penn relays, all the years when I was at Curtis. So a combination of all these people and the exposure was just tremendous. And I think I was fortunate to fall, in the line of sight of these people. And of course, that experience led me in my junior year to working at Institute for Basic Research, where I started to do real experiments. With Dr. Georgia Levis, beautiful lady, great heart. She's deceased now, but another experience that was just priceless for me and helped to really get me to where I'm at today.
Yeah, that is a incredible journey, incredible role models. My German that I became very fluent with was Sprechen Sie English, and that got me pretty far when we were traveling.
Well, I'll tell you, even the pronunciation. So Mr. Scheiper was such a stickler for the pronunciation. He would talk about North and South German, right?
Yeah, and it's different. So, it's really different.
It's different. Yep. He goes, and people from the South, they speak Ploitish. It's not German.
Yeah. I think we were in Berlin or I think we were in Hamburg, and my wife or somebody, we went up and made a comment to someone, and they kind of like turned their nose up at us, and they're like, basically they said, you speak like dirty German, Southern German is I think what they were calling it. I was like, wow.
Yeah, you need to speak the German from Bavaria, north,
Yeah.
So it would be, your diction should be sprechen Sie, sprechen Sie Deutsch.
I was saying it too nice. I think is what it was.
That's right. That's right.
So next part of your journey, what is it that made you decide I'm going to raise my right hand and join the military?
Interesting story there, Bodie. And my brother and I were leaving Liberia to emigrate to the U.S. with with mom. My grandfather Pedro called us, and he said, "Boys, you're going to another country." Again, you got to remember our family was always very close knit. And he said, "I don't know that if I'll ever see you boys again, but I have two things for you." And the first was his Bible. He says, "In this book lies all of the answers to every question you will ever have about anything." And he handed the Bible to me for Peter and I. And my brother Peter is now deceased as well. And the second thing he shared with us was, he said, "Wherever you find yourselves, okay, make sure that you serve in your country's military. That is the greatest honor that you can give to your country." So I had that parked back there somewhere in my mind, and when we left and came and arrived here in the U.S. And so in 1988, with an affinity for old buildings, and New York City has many majestic old buildings, include the armories. I was doing research at the time at the Black Building at Columbia University, the medical school up on 168th Street, and doing one of my long centrifuge spins, separating out proteins. That goes on for hours at very high speeds. I decided to go out and get some air and look around. And next thing I know, I was in this armory building, which was right across the street. And before I left there, I was signing papers. Now that is a good recruiter, okay?
No kidding. He got you.
Looking at the ceiling and admiring the walls and these marble floors, and next thing I know, I'm signing papers.
Got a T-shirt and a hat and everything to go along with it.
The whole 9 yards, and scheduling to go off to to Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri for basic training in AIT.
And you were 26 years old when you joined too, right?
Yes.
I was 28, and I was called. I noticed in your book you said they called you the old man. I was referred to. I was ancient because I was 28 years old when I went through basic training.
That's right. So you and I share many of the same experiences then. However, this old man, I outran, out push up, out sit ups, a lot of these young guys who go on there, and developed a relationship, profound respect for the drill sergeants.
Yeah.
Till this day, even though I've now retired and I look back, these people are really unsung heroes. They go back and they're doing their jobs. But when you think about what they do to take a civilian young man or woman and put them through the paces, to have them graduate and become, a soldier in the U.S. military, the greatest military in the world, tremendous. I don't think we can thank them enough. We cannot acknowledge them enough. And for the most part, they will just assume let things be quiet. They don't want the attention. They don't want that light on them. But having those people with those set of values and that outlook and that strength and focus helps tremendously. And sure, and I'm sure not everyone makes it through basic training, but a large number do succeed, greater than 99%. And this speaks in large part to their coaching, mentoring approach, their teaching, and just being there. They know people.
Yeah, I think this episode is becoming like unsung heroes of people who've been influential in your life. And I still remember take that back. I see what you're saying, because when I came in, I was older. I had more appreciation for my TI than I would have if I was 19 years old. I think if I was 19 years old, I would have hated my TI, but I kind of got it, being that, I had a little bit more age under my belt. And I actually still keep up with mine on social media. He just retired not too long ago. He was a phenomenal MTI for me, Trevor Gilliland. And it was actually pretty cool. I got to watch his graduation. I got to watch his retirement ceremony virtually because of the pandemic that we're going through. But yeah, it's a tough journey. So what were the first couple of years like for you in the military?
It's well, when I completed basic training in AIT, came back to the unit. Of course, now I'm in a company headquarters, specialist E3. A PFC, private first class, and then I quickly got promoted to an E4 specialist. And I remember, and again, I'm in the country, less than 10 years. Okay, and so much is still new and exciting and unfolding and unraveling for me. And my company commander was another individual, Dan McNally, that left a tremendous impression on me, him and the first sergeant. And so when I came showed up to the unit and started to do my drills, this was on the M-Day status, so once a month and twice, 2 weeks, 3 weeks out of the year, and maybe some other missions in between. But primarily, you're still a civilian, and you get involved or come in and report in for any types of special work that that was scheduled, and you got paid for it as well. But a number of things happened that stuck in my mind when we came from we returned from Fort Drum from an annual training, and it's a time when no one leaves. You do inventory and a bunch of different things, but they found out that a 9mm weapon was missing, which is a big deal. I mean, the world stops, right? Because this is a military weapon, and God forbid, the authorities find this weapon or it's involved in some
active
murder
shooter or something.
Yeah, it's just not a good thing. So I remember immediately, still not quite understanding what was taking place. They shut down the entire armory, and the company commander, Dan McNally. So his full-time job was as a New York City police officer. He worked in the bomb squad. Okay, but they shut down the entire armory. He got all his officers and whoever, the first sergeants, and he told me, listen, give me whatever cash you have. He collected all his cash from them, and he wrote them down and gave them all IOUs. And then he promptly put the word back out. He says, hey, there's somebody looking to buy a piece. Okay, so, and he charged the same group to go out there. Now, as a E4, there were several of us, about 4 of us, who he kept around us to do his, we did a lot of the documenting with the file folding and so on and so forth. He was always kind of like mentoring us to go become officers, because we were college students, but we hadn't graduated, and here we were enlisted. So he would charge us with doing a lot of administrative, kind of introducing us to what it is to become, to be like a lieutenant. But he did have, as a captain, he did have the lieutenants, of the platoon. So he charged them with this. And sure enough, before the end of that day, that evening, the person who had stolen this weapon made contact. We're trying to sell it. And, he put the word out there, I'm looking to spend about $700-800. I want to buy a piece. And those guys put the word out throughout the unit. And this knucklehead tried to make contact. And of course, he was caught. We say criminals are not the smartest people walking around, right? But then—
They look better on paper.
Yeah, exactly. So something like that, stuck in my mind. And it was interesting the way Dan McNally approached that. Another incident was him digging in his heels against a major who did not want to go to the range to qualify with his weapon.
Was that for like a deployment?
Well, this is just this was not even for deployment.
Just like annual qualification.
Annual qualifications.
Yeah.
And as you know, the headquarters company command has all of the senior folks in there, in that company, because that commander and that first sergeant, they are responsible for all the administrative stuff for those people, even the battalion commander, and the battalion XO, and all these other majors and lieutenant colonel. So he's a captain, but he's in charge of them administratively. And hitting your metrics is one of the things that he, as a company commander, was responsible for. Weapons qual, APFT, all of your medical, all of those things. So this major did not want to go to the range. And the captain dug in his heels. He said, listen, you need to go to the range and qualify with your 9mm. And if you don't, I'm not going to pay you, and I'm going to alert the old man. Okay, and this is for him. There's a major and here's a captain, and they're going at it, right? Eventually, the major got up and he stormed out and he went to the range. But I'll never forget what Captain McNally said. And he looked at Adorno, another guy with me there, and he says, you got to understand something. Leadership is not a popularity contest. You have to do what's right. And he stormed off, and we went off walking behind him. And then, of course, when I showed up to drill this one day, they told me, hey, guy, you need to go to OCS. They had completed all of my documentation, and I think they even signed my name on papers. And I showed up to OCS, and 2 years later, I got my commission. But
and you had a very prestigious military career lasting over 30 plus years of service. If you were to define your career in one word, what word would you use?
It's been exciting. Exciting.
So
that's the one word I'll say about it.
What was that one moment where you're like, this is my purpose right here to do this?
Well, when I became battalion commander. But so, as you know, there are many years that lead up to that. But exciting because I'll share this with you, Bodhi. I never had one bad assignment or one bad experience. Never did. Every single assignment and experience was great, and that's just an awesome record. Every single one was awesome. I never had a bad assignment.
You think attitude has a lot to do with that too?
Probably. But a number of things. Because I was older, I already had a son, I had a mortgage, I was married, so my outlook, I think, was different. And I wanted to serve, and it didn't matter that I was serving in the Army. I would go serve in the Coast Guard. If the Army says, "Hey, we don't need you," I'll go for the Coast Guard. I will serve wherever. And my gosh, the United States has more than one branch of service that you can serve in. So, and it didn't matter that it was an Army. I could have served in the Marines, Air Force, whichever one. I just happened to walk into that Armory that day, and I signed for the National Guard. So I wanted to serve, and I think so that may have framed my attitude going in, right? And then particularly as I learned later on, as I continued to read and develop and grow, and serving, even in the officer ranks, okay, you are responsible to do anything your senior leaders or your leader tells you to do, except two things, right? Except two things. They cannot tell you to do something that's illegal, and they cannot tell you to do something that is immoral.
Yep.
Okay. If you get an order about those two things, you can tell them to go pound sand. So put that to the side. Apart from that, anything else that comes down the road, let's go. I'm ready. Because at the end of the day, everything builds on readiness. And that's what we're about. That's what we get paid for. That's what those guys and gals in the suits, up on Capitol Hill, that's what we get paid for. That's what the American people pay us for, to be ready. So school, physical stuff, learning, exercises, just go and do it. What's the problem? Yeah. You're not being told to do anything that's illegal, and you're not being told to do anything that is immoral. And oh, by the way, this contributes to both individual and collective readiness, so that when you are called, you are fit and ready to go and execute your job to the best of your abilities. Now, who in the world is going to fight that?
I think that's the problem. So a lot is people, the immoral, the illegal part aside, I think a lot of people try to fight other things. And I think that's the problem. It's just a difference of opinion. I'm not going to do that as well. And I think that's where a lot of people get into, I hate this assignment. I hate this leadership. Yeah. The next thing I want to bring up is this. So you finished your 30 plus years of service, and then you've done something that I want to do still to this day, and it's not off of my bucket list, but you got a book. You got a book out there, On Guard, The 4 Pillars of Leadership. I'm not going to spoil the book for our listeners. They'll have to go out and get one. But if you were to sum up the book for them, how would you do that?
Well, I want to draw your attention to the 4 pillars of leadership. And it can be easily remembered using the acronym of CLIP, C-L-I-P, which stands for courage, love, integrity, and passion. So with all of my experiences, I boiled it all down to leading with a firm foundation in those 4 pillars. And it all started with this concept that, leadership, first of all, is getting people to do what you want them to do without resorting to intimidation, humiliation, or fear, right? That's not leading. That's bullying people and hitting them over the head. And it's assault, and you can get put in jail for that. Okay. But while we can manage our processes, our assembly lines, and a fleet of cars and buses and construction projects and whatever else we do, you manage those things. The people who are pulling those levers and pushing those buttons and doing those work, those people need to be led. Okay, you cannot manage people. And people need to be led because they're bringing people issues with them 24/7 wherever they go. And a strong leader, an effective leader, a good leader, okay, is while you're leading the people, you're helping to manage those people issues that they bring with them. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, if you fail to address an issue with a team member or an employee or what have you, you fail to address whatever baggage they have, that's going to directly impact your mission. It's going to directly impact your objective. And if you don't believe me, give it a try. Let me know how that works out for you, because I've seen it over and over. But to come back to CLIP, we know a lot about courage. We know about integrity. We know about passion. The love part is where I found myself talking a lot about, and people kind of say, love? It's kind of wonky. It's kind of jello-ish,
I thought that was the interesting one of the 4.
Yeah. What's this love? Well, effective leaders are lovers. I say leaders are lovers of people. Okay. You cannot lead people if you don't love people, the human person, right? I'm talking about brotherly love, agape love, not the love between a man and a woman. Okay. And I'll tell you, when you look through history, effective leaders, and let's just start with an example, say Jesus Christ.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And come on down to your Gandhi, to your Mother Teresa, to your Martin Luther King, and countless others throughout history who have focused on the people aspect of the people of their leadership. That's that love where they become so passionate about the people, it'll cause them to fall on their sword. And it's okay. They're all right with that. Of all those people that I mentioned, with the exception of Mother Teresa, many of them were assassinated, were killed. When you think about it. And why were they killed? They were killed for their message to people, their desire to elevate people, to move them from where they met them and get them up to that next level. That's the love pillar. It allows for full engagement. It allows for bringing your best self. There is always room for improvement and getting better and better. So, and I can talk about that pillar, all day long, but to summarize the book, I will tell people to focus on those 4 pillars of CLIP as they are reading the book, and you'll see the countless examples of that throughout the book in the offices that I mentioned, and so on. And there are many others, but these also stuck in my mind, to include even NCOs. But again, I was focusing on these officers. Leadership is an exciting avenue because you are looking to elevate people and move them from the space that they're currently in, that their comfortable space, right? We say or think about it, most people are walking around just dead. They're zombies.
Yeah.
They're not living. They're not experiencing what their purpose is, what they're here to do, or whatever it is. I had 2 assignments for my children when they were growing up, and I would tell them this, guys, forget all your schoolwork. You can fail every course. You can, bring Fs every day. But I want you guys to think about 2 things. I want you to figure out or find out why you were here. There is something unique to you that only you can do in this entire world. And my daughter was always she was always wowed by Dad. She's like, wow, really? Yeah, there is something that only you can do in this world. Now, others may be able to do the same thing, but they won't be able to do it quite the same way that you do it.
Yeah.
When you do it, you're going to get the wow effect from people. People are going to go, wow. Okay. And it's unique to you. Find out what that is. And the other thing I want you to do is, wherever you go and you meet people, figure out how to improve their lives, how to leave them better off than when you met them. There is something you can do to always help people and help them to grow. So, and of course, with my focus on that, I never had to deal with them, bringing in failing grades.
Yeah.
And the conversation went on from there. But again, it's that focus on, getting people to realize what their purpose, what it is they're hardwired for.
Mm-hmm.
We're all hardwired to do something. And, I say, when you are engaged doing that, here's a way to discover what you're hardwired for. You're going to experience 2 things when you're doing it. You're going to experience timelessness and effortlessness. So what do you mean by that? Well, when you're doing what you're hardwired for, you lose track of time. They will have to come and knock on your door and say, hey, it's time to go home at 6 o'clock. I'm like, seriously? It feels like 9 o'clock in the morning. And while you're doing it, it's not hard. It's not difficult. It just flows. And your mind is just flowing about it. And the creative ideas are just flowing. When you're experiencing those 2 things, Bodhi, I tell you, you have cracked the code on what it is you're hardwired for.
Purpose. Yeah.
purpose.
No, I,
Absolutely.
I've found it interesting the past couple of years of really studying like task versus people orientation. And I think you talking about that zombie mentality, people get stuck in that task orientation of just doing the job, getting it done. But when you bring in that people aspect, that nurture mentality, that love, that's when you can really get somebody to think and dig deep within themselves and really find that purpose because somebody's invested in them now. And I think too many times it's just you come through, you're another name you go through on the conveyor belt, you get them out. But when you have that, we talked about Mr. Ryan and Mr. Burton and all these teachers that we've had and, drill sergeants. That's the person who, sometimes can pull that out of you. And I think that's leadership's so broad to where you can ask 10,000 people what their definition is and you're going to get 10,000 different answers. But
Absolutely.
I think that love often goes overlooked with leadership. So I think it was fantastic that you brought that up in your book because I really do think it adds a lot more value.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. And, for the majority of people, you really can't blame them. They get stuck in this mode, right? People
It's the
have to pay
norm.
bills.
Yeah.
They got to pay the mortgage, they got to pay the cell phone bill, the car bill, and all these things. So it's doing something that generates income so that they can do these things. But in doing that, they've lost themselves.
Mm-hmm.
There's no creativity there. There's no innovation. And they're just checking the blocks so they get that paycheck and do what they have to do. And so the other conversation that I would have with people is, once you find what you're hardwired for and you are doing it, okay, you can make an income from it.
Mm-hmm.
But this is where it becomes difficult, right? So how do you balance that? Well, I say this, there's always room for one more good person. So just imagine, Bodie, you own a basketball team, okay? And
Dream of
you set up,
mine.
you have set up your squad, your coaching staff, your budget, everything is all set for the season. And you're sitting at home on a Sunday afternoon, listening to music. You're very pleased with yourself that everything's going the way you want. Your doorbell rings, and you tell the butler, "Hey, I got this. Continue doing what you're doing." And you waltz over to the door in your house robe, and you open it, and Michael Jordan says, "Bodie, I want to play on your team." What do you do?
Okay. He's a Tar Heel. He's got a spot on my team. But
I tell you what you do. You are going to make room for him. Okay.
Yeah, it's true.
If your squad and your budget is all set, you are going to make room to put Michael Jordan on your team. Why is that? Because he's good at what he does. Okay. Yeah. And he's gotten good at what he does because he discovered that he's hardwired for that. He brings creativity, he brings innovativeness to this activity. And you want some of that. Okay. So because he's good at what he does, you will make room for him. And so it is with any one of the professions: politics, business, religion, sports, entertainment, you name it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And people will always make room for you for one more good person on the team. So really the focus is to have us figure out what is it that you're hardwired for. Okay. Because understand, everything about you will be that. The books that you read, the programs that you watch, the friends that you keep, conversations, everything is going to be about that. Okay. And when you are that immersed, you don't have a choice to be either the best or among the best at that. And as a result, they'll always make room for you. They will fire somebody to put you on just because you've got a good command of what that is. And so then you try to get the fear away from people. Unfortunately, folks get comfortable. I remember at the landmine warfare school, there's a etched in the granite that said, the point on the thermostat where it's neither hot nor cold is considered the comfort zone. Over here, we call it the dead zone. Okay. If you find yourself being comfortable, get out. Do not sit in comfort. Comfort is bad, because what happens when you're comfortable? You stop growing, you stop developing, you stop being creative, you
Complacency.
stop thinking about different ways of doing what it is you're doing. Comfort is not a good thing. It is the dead zone.
Yeah. Get comfortable being uncomfortable. That is one of my favorite sayings in life. Yeah, comfort breeds
Sounds like a drill
complacency.
sergeant.
Yeah, I heard that like whenever I was asked to be an airman leadership school instructor, and I was like, I don't think I don't feel comfortable doing this. And the reply automatically right back to me was, get comfortable being uncomfortable. If you're not, your career is going nowhere. It is being complacent, and complacency holds you down. And that's something I've lived by.
Mm-hmm.
So that's amazing stuff here. I mean, that's awesome. If someone wants to go and check out your book, where can they find it?
Yes, so it's available on Amazon. And also you can check out my website at www.muddybootsleadership.com. And again, it's www.muddybootsleadership.com. And the book is also available on Amazon. If I can share a couple of other things with you. So with the book, I'm at the part of my career where they invited me to say, Dan, you need to retire. And I'm like, already? I can still do this, right? I have I run a scholarship program in West Africa and Sierra Leone for girls. And it's been going on for about 5 years. And it's an attempt to get people to see that we don't have a choice, okay, particularly in the African continent. We don't have a choice. We need to include everyone at the table, the discussion table, developing, coming up with ideas for everything from clean drinking water to drainage to roads and bridges and education and medical. The list goes on and on and on, right? And to give young girls the knowledge that they have a voice, that for them to understand that people are interested in knowing what you think, okay, and want to hear from you. So the scholarship helps to pay their school tuition for 1 year at a time, and every year they have to recompete and they get selected and so on. So I have 23 girls in the program now. Something I'm very excited about. Eventually, that program is going to be the feeder for the school that I'm going to open, and the school is going to be patterned after. It's going to use part of military as well as civilian cohort type mix. So small groups, 8 to 12 students with a small group leader. That's from military schools. I got that. Very effective way to break up students. School would be 6 days long, Monday through Saturday, from 8 in the morning to 6 in the evening, and everything gets done in that time. So when they're released to their small group leaders, that's on their own time. Mandatory, every year, every student will take a sports, will do an arts, and will study a language. That's mandatory every year, in addition to your reading, writing, arithmetic, and everything else. And it's going to be built on a foundation of leadership.
Like that.
And then it grows from there. So that's I call it the Harris After Next project.
Yeah.
And,
I told you I've been working with the Senegalese, so if you need me to do anything, let me know.
I will definitely. I'll definitely ping you, brother, for sure. Thank you.
You mentioned muddybootsleadership.com. If you could fill us in on what exactly is muddybootsleadership.com.
Yeah, so Muddy Boots Leadership is the name of the leadership firm that I'm running, and it's to grow and develop managers into leaders. Again, there is always room for continuous growth and development, right? Always. And it's how do managers, supervisors get the people on their team, the people that they're leading, okay, how do they get them to produce at that elevated level, at that next level? So that's all I can say about it right now without mentioning, because of legal reasons, all the other pieces that go with it. But suffice it to say, Muddy Boots Leadership is the firm where we grow and develop managers and supervisors. I say we do it one step at a time. And, Muddy Boots, because if you are leading effectively, your shoes, your boots are going to be dirty. You cannot lead from behind your desk. You cannot lead from sitting in your office. There's something called critical time and place, where as a leader, you always need to know what that is and place yourself there. Because if you don't, your objective is not going to happen. You, the leader, act as a catalyst in a chemical reaction, in a chemical equation, to drive that reaction in the direction that you need it to. So, well, you can't act as a catalyst if you're not in a pivotal, critical spot. And that's called time and place. And you need to be able to know it and find it and place yourself there constantly. So very effective. It worked very well for me. As a battalion commander, I got into the office early. I was like the Jackson Brown of the team. I told them, first to come, last to leave, working for minimum wage, right? But one of the things I would do when I rolled in was I walked around that entire armory. I'd go down into the basement, I'd go through the staff offices, and I'll see how people worked. I'll see where they left confidential information on their desks, and instead of folded in file drawers and locked away. Supply cages, if I found them unlocked, I would open it, go in and drag a lot of that equipment to my office. And so many supply sergeants used to pump out. I mean, you have to buy it back. What do you call, like the family readiness group pool? So I remember this one story. My supply guy was like, "Sir, I'm missing, I think it was like 3 dozen APFT uniforms, a bunch of things that were left unsecured." So I dragged it off to my office, and he wanted them back. And I said, "Well, you'll get it back. Yeah, it's 100 push-ups, or $20." And so I became known. After a while, everybody started making sure that everything was locked down. But you wouldn't find those things out if you didn't walk around, if you didn't know. So very effective.
True. I like the name. I like the Muddy Boots name.
You.
I like that. I think it's pretty fitting. Well, two final questions here for you. First, other than your book, what is a book that you recommend to somebody for leadership?
Well, I tell you, the Bible is one, and you'd have to think of how you'd make those connections. But, as a text, right? As a text, it's all about people. And you are going to encounter people in all walks of life and in every situation. So if you really want to understand that thing about people, that's a great starting point. It's a great starting point. And there's so many others. I think you asked about 2. We have, without defining any particular book, I'll put out this perspective. We have many leadership books that talk about concepts, the mechanics, the definitions. Okay, I would invite you to focus on books that focus on the growth and development of the people. Okay, of people. Okay, because it's always about, and I think I have a line in the book there, it's about people, stupid, once you're able to unlock and get people pointed in that direction that they need to be, understand you don't have to worry about anything else, So if leadership is getting people to do what you want them to do without resorting to those things I talked about, then what is your purpose as the boss, as the leader? You're not there to show them how to do their work. If you have, interviewed them correctly and have onboarded them correctly, they're not, your purpose is not to show them their work, right? They know how to do their jobs. So what is your purpose? Your purpose is resourcing, prioritizing, right? Where if they come to a fork in the road and they look over their left shoulder and say, hey, boss, what do you want, left or right? Okay, yep, let's go right. Okay, and you keep moving. So you resource, you prioritize, and clear out those hurdles out of their way so that they continue to do their work. You're not there to show them how to do their work. It's micromanaging and so on and so forth. Poor is the leader that thinks that that's their job. That's not what you're there for.
Okay. So, final question.
Yes.
I love asking guests this. 50 years from now, when someone mentions Daniel Harris, what do you want them to say about you?
He was a lover of people, and he seeked to elevate the lives of people wherever he met them. That's what I want them to remember.
I like it. It's a good thing to be known for.
Thank you.
Well, sir, I can't thank you enough for taking time to be a guest here on our podcast today. One more time, if they would like to find out more about you, where can they go?
Please, yes. It's www.muddybootsleadership.com, all one word, www.muddybootsleadership.com. And the book, On Guard, The 4 Pillars of Leadership, is available on Amazon. And when you do buy it and read it, make sure that you leave me a review because that helps. And again, that goes to my continuous growth and development. I get better from your perspectives and your critiques, both positive and negative. So I look forward to that. Thank you.
Well, it's been a pleasure having you here on the show, sir. Folks, make sure you tune in next week for another episode. That is going to conclude this one. The Chronicles of Daniel Harris here on the Shadows Podcast.